never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know.
Oh, there's some new subclasses from Unearthed.
Oh, that's
Arcana?
what it was.
Yeah.
I remember. I kept meaning to mention this to you. Unearthed Arcana, and there's 3 new subclasses. One of them is particularly interesting, the Brawler, that I want to talk about, but you should pull that up so that we can take a look at it.
Okay, yeah, I've looked at it before. So Unearthed Arcana, the playtest for D&D has 3 new subclasses. 1 for the Druid, 1 for the Fighter, and 1 for the Wizard.
Definitely talk about first is Fighter subclass. And the reason for that is that somebody mathed it out, and it's just mathematically in every way superior to the champion, which...
Get your hands off me, you brute!
You brute! Which is not surprising, because the champion is not only the most boring subclass in standard 5th edition, but also probably the weakest. The Brute is cool. The thing is, what's really neat about the Brute is that it gives you the ability to obviously fight with your fists, fight with different sorts of weapons, and be effective. If you're the kind of person who wants to hit people with a chair or something, it definitely plays to the, WWE wannabes, if you really feel like making a luchador or a pro wrestler or something like that.
And his name is John C.
Well, this is exactly what we've been saying, is that 5th edition has a hard time making subclasses or martial archetypes that don't add spells or magical effects.
Right.
To be interesting, and I think this one does an okay job compared to. So the 3rd level ability for the champion, the other basic ass fighter archetype, is that they get better criticals. The problem is a player's only going to feel the effects of that 5% of the time. Right. Whereas the Brute, the basic ability is you add a damage die to every single hit. So you get to feel how good you are every time you succeed at attacking.
And a universal truth of role-playing games that D&D resisted for a long time is that rolling more dice is fun. Everybody likes rolling more dice. Everybody likes rolling extra dice, bonus dice. That's one of the cool things about Advantage is that it's rolling extra dice. And this just, even if, mathematically it does work out better than the champion, but even if it didn't, it feels fun because you get to roll an extra dice when you're doing damage, and everybody likes that.
Yeah, I think it's a better version of the champion. I don't know. I might I would consider letting players combine features of the Brute and the champion. Like if they really wanted the 7th level champion, like Paragon ability, where you get to get advantage on athletics checks or whatever that is, instead of brutish durability. I'm not sold on the name, though.
The Brute? No, I'm not sold on it either. Somebody suggested on the D&D subreddit that this might be replacing the champion, in the same way that the new ranger replaced the old ranger, but I don't think it does the exact same thing, so I'm not sure I feel that.
I don't think there's any reason for that. It's 2 simple subclasses that accomplish the same thing.
Right.
Make players' lives easy, for playing a fighter, right? If you want to play a straightforward fighter, boom, you're there. I mean, there's no reason why. But yeah, mechanically, the Brute doesn't match up with the way the mechanics can actually work, because you could be an archer Brute, right? And it would actually probably be really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no reason why that would apply to, the description of Brute applies to archery, but mechanically it totally does.
Yeah, whenever you hit with a weapon that you're proficient with and deal damage, the weapon's damage increases by an amount, blah, blah, blah. So you could do that with a crossbow or a short bow or anything. So the flavor of Brute is a little off. You could just be like an especially tough, powerful, survivable fighter. It's a great idea, or it's a great... I like the subtype, or I like the subclass. It's just the flavor's a little weird, and it clearly outclasses the champion.
Yeah,
which is not
power creep.
Something I care about a whole lot. But I guess if I had a player who was a champion, I would have to deal with that.
Well, I feel like the champion has a big sign on it that if you pick it, you're saying, I don't really care about this shit. I don't care about being outclassed, right? Because there's no reason why a player who cares about the nitty-gritty mechanics of the game would ever pick the champion over the battle master. The battle master just has so many more things.
I see what you're saying. If you really want to get into the fun nuts and bolts of a fighter, then yeah, you're going to pick battle master. The thing is, like, the base fighter class is very strong and has plenty of interesting things with action surge and second wind and fighting styles already, even if you don't make a whole lot of use of the subclass. So champion is a perfectly viable choice, but you're correct in that people are probably going to choose it for theme or simplicity, down and dirty with things, then they're going to pick battle master anyway. Okay, we've talked about Brute for a long time.
Well, when I saw this new release, you went straight to the Brute because you are a physical creature, Robert. But me, I live in the world of ideas,
world of the mind,
and the mind. And I'm also, with my own homebrew, was trying to make a Technomancer subclass for the wizard. And here they are. They gave us a Arcane Tradition School of Invention, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Wizards who craft magic items and magical power things. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all right. What do you get? Number 1, Tools of the Inventor. Two tool proficiencies. Okay, that's a thing. 2, Arcano-Mechanical Armor. Okay, you're Iron Man, a wizard Iron Man. This sounds really neat. But then when you read it, it's so very limiting in that you can only make this out of studded leather armor. And I was like, wait a second. I was going to be a full plate wizard, and you just ruined it.
This is interesting because I made a similar ability for my my artificer for 5th edition for Eberron. One of the options that they could choose was a magical suit of armor, but it was, substantially more powerful, or it got more powerful.
It just goes down.
It'll give you like a 15 AC, which is
like 1 lower than you would get if you cast mage armor on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's not in any way.
You're fucking killing yourself to get resistance to a very rare damage type, force damage.
Oh, does it give you resistance to force damage? That's something.
It does. That's something.
It's not. I mean, it's not great. Not going to come up a lot. I don't know. It's a cool idea. Wildly undertuned.
But you can't expand on it, right?
Oh, that's exactly what I was thinking, yeah.
If you take the feat like heavy armor proficiency or multi-class into a class that gives you that, and you're like, all right, now I'm going to make a suit of half-plate arcano-mechanical armor, you can't do that. It specifically says you can only do it with light armor, and then there's nothing that builds on it. Nothing else in the class is like, all right, whenever you're wearing Arcano magical armor, you now have jet boots at level 10, or, some other thing. It goes nowhere. The other basic ability, Reckless Casting, I just feel like is thematically way off. If you're an inventor, to me that says you have precise control over, like, what you're doing. And this feels like something that like a wild sorcerer would get, just, casting spells and you don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, without looking, doesn't this step on the toes of the wild sorcerer a little bit?
Yeah, it totally does. And it also just seems like I don't really know why you would ever not want to know what spell you're gonna cast. I'm sure it leads to some fun play where you're like, all right, I'm going to shoot them. And then you cast light instead of, why would you spend a spell slot to not know what spell you're casting? Why wouldn't you just cast a spell that you already have prepared?
Yeah, there are other types of inventor besides mad inventor. Like not every inventor is insane.
Anyway, to some School of Invention, cool ideas and themes. One of the abilities doesn't fit with that theme, and then the whole thing seems weak sauce. There's also a druid subclass for druids who like fungi.
It's the fungus one, right?
Yeah, which is good, and I'm happy it's there.
I actually like it.
Definitely have an NPC that likes to decay things and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a super neat idea. I'm a fan. Well, let's say fun. We have some unwanted advice, Matt?
That's right. Unwanted Advice, number 2, the most popular podcasting segment in Dungeons & Dragons history, where we find people who have problems and tell them what to do. Whether they're dungeon masters or players, we will fix your problems.
And we have a rich body of questions to draw from, because nerds like to go online to Reddit and N-World and where else and say, my group is doing something insane and weird. What do you suggest? And then they get a bunch of bad advice. Now they can get bad advice from us instead of randos on the internet.
No one is safe from me. I am constantly trolling all of these forums. Not trolling.
Trawling.
Both. Trawling all these forums to find people who have questions. Are you ready for question one?
I am ready for a question. To be clear, I have not heard any of these things. I don't know what the problem is.
Question 1. I've been a DM for a group for a little less than a year now, and I've had the same problem since day one. My players aren't playing their characters. I asked my players to write a couple paragraphs about their character, their motivations, their background, their goals. I take these things and incorporate them into the campaign, but it's almost impossible for them to get involved once these elements show up in the story. One example, I have a player whose background involved being infected by lycanthropy by a group of specific wizards. Instead of being interested whenever a wizard of this order is cited, the player didn't do anything and instead allowed one of the other players to speak to this NPC, despite his affiliation and this quest being personal. It isn't just personal stories that I have this problem with either. It's whenever they interact with the world around them, they always approach talking to NPCs very reluctantly and only seem to like combat. Despite my wife, one of the players telling me that they don't really enjoy combat. I feel sometimes that they'd be better off just having no story at all involved and I should just send wave after wave of monsters from the manual at them until they get bored. I don't know what I can do better to better involve story elements and to get my players involved. It's draining me of my enjoyment in planning and running campaigns.
Well, this is actually not at all surprising problem, and one that you're going to hear from a lot of new and inexperienced DMs and GMs, I think. I don't want to make any assumptions about this person. Do they give any background? They
said, I've been playing for a year now.
They're just a baby DM. This is not surprising at all. Look, this is a problem that you're going to run into a lot with new groups and groups that haven't developed a lot of cohesion yet and players who aren't used to role-playing. But the answer, I think, is right there in the post. It sounds like, and regardless of what one of his players told him separately, it sounds like the players would prefer a different type of game. It sounds like the players would like something a lot more hack and slashy, maybe with some, sure, there's some NPCs and some story, but maybe a simple and easy to follow one that doesn't involve a lot of complicated roleplay. The other,
So you gotta build your character. If this is the type of game that you want to run with lots of story and role playing and stuff like that, you got to build your characters up to that, right?
Right.
Maybe it sounds like Rob said, they just want to play combat and explore and break down doors in a dungeon. You should build them a dungeon that does exactly that, but
yeah, and we talked about this
some mysteries and story about the world around them.
We talked about this in an earlier episode, maybe multiple times, but you have to choose your group carefully, and you have to adjust your game to the players that you have, and you have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And the problem is obvious here. The obvious problem is that not everybody's on the same page. The DM wants to run a certain type of game, and the players want to run a certain type of game. If your players have a elaborate backstory that they put together or that you put together, and you drop something in front of them and they don't take the bait, that's fine. It's disappointing. It's not the end of the world, but it suggests that maybe they're not that invested in that part of the game. So tack left, do something a little bit different. Put a different type of dungeon in front of them. It might be useful to talk to your players and say, look, this is what I want to run. Let's be very clear about what type of game that you want to have. But it really sounds like the problem and the solution is relatively clear. The players are indicating what kind of game they like to play, and then it's up to the DM to either run that game or adjust expectations or find a different group.
Yeah, and my advice is definitely the same as Rob in that talk to your players. It sounds like there hasn't been any communication except some side communication with one player that you're close with, your wife. Talk to your players about what they want out of the campaign, right? This character that has this complicated plot about being infected with lycanthropy and stuff like that. Maybe they don't want that, and that's okay, right? They enjoy combat and they enjoy watching their friends talk with NPCs, but they don't want to do that themselves yet, and they'll get there eventually. But it's okay that they don't want that.
The other thing, the example that he gave, I'm assuming it's a he. I gotta stop doing that. The example that the DM gave, just off without knowing the circumstances, if you put an NPC in there that you want to interact with a certain player, have them interact with that player, address that player by name, or have them, find a way to draw out that player. That's something that all DMs have to do, but that I have to do with my less talky players. If there's a circumstance where, it's specifically something that they should deal with, that they want to deal with, make sure that you address that character by name, or you put something like that's very clearly designed for them to pick up on. Like, right. If you've got a player
send them a dream, write them a letter. Maybe they're shy about talking in the moment. Write them, this NPC has written them a letter that they can then just read in front of the rest of the group, right? Baby steps.
And it's not, it doesn't sound like an insurmountable problem. It's unfortunate that the DM is feeling burnout or not enjoying preparation for the game, and that is definitely something that needs to be dealt with. But if the problem is that the players aren't interested in the type of game that DM wants to run, then you got to talk to your players or find a different group.
My one other piece of advice before we wrap this up is the letter writer says, I asked my players to write a couple paragraphs about their character and their motivations, their backgrounds, and their goals. For new players, that's honestly probably not the best way to incorporate them into role-playing. Having a backstory does not mean you know how to role-play a character.
Correct.
Or play those things. These things are two separate things.
One thing, I don't have my players write backstories anymore. They can if they want to, and many do, but what I usually do is have them answer a very short list of questions. Things like, what's your motivation? Who's an important person in your background? What is your ultimate goal? What does success look like for your character? Broad questions that get them thinking about what drives their character to do what they do. And again, this is the other thing that I talked about a lot, is I always make sure I have a question about why they would want to be a part of a group. What motivation do they have to be a member of an adventuring party? And rather than having them write out, a backstory, which may or may not actually have any effect on how you roleplay a character, you have them work on a set of motivations. So, but it sounds like this is a new DM, an inexperienced DM, dealing with the growing pains of a group, and I'm sure that
problems are normal and solvable.
I'm sure that they will come to an agreement. It may be a change in the membership of the group. It may be taking a break from DMing, or maybe just it's a conversation about what everybody wants to do. But don't worry, letter writer, who we forgot to give a name to. These problems are normal and solvable, and I'm sure that you will get back to enjoying your game in no time at all.
Okay, here's question 2. It's a short one. I think it won't take us long to answer, but a strange one. So I'm DMing for the first time as part of what's eventually going to turn into an actual play-based game. It's going pretty well. My party, Barbarian, Rogue, Cleric, seems to be having a good time. I haven't played tons before, and the 2 campaigns I've played in, I've been a Paladin and a Rogue. So there's a point I want to get across, and I plant this cool NPC Paladin in a magic shop run by a doddering old wizard for the PCs to run into. Do they decide to take her, the Paladin, on the adventure? Nope, they take the doddering old wizard. I've never run a wizard before, and the little research I've done in the 6 hours since we finished playing makes it seem like such a finicky class. Should I try to find a local game store and play a session as a wizard? Just do a bunch of research? How do I run this guy? Thanks.
Boy, this is a strange one for sure.
I know, right?
Matt, it seems like you have some opinions about this. I have some thoughts.
Sure.
But go ahead.
So, I mean, this is obviously a DM who is very new, right?
Yeah.
And so this is some really basic advice, is that running NPCs, it doesn't matter what class they are. They're still people. Everyone is people, right? You already have a great NPC that your players felt attracted to. You said they were a doddering old wizard. I'm sure how you introduced this NPC to your players in some way attracted to them, to having them tag along for the next part of this adventure. And that's perfect. So you already know how to play it. If you've ever met an old person in your life before, play them like one of those.
It also seems a little bit like the DM was expecting to plant a DM PC in the party. Something I'm not sure I've ever planted an NPC anywhere in any of my games and had the expectations that the players would say, sure, come join our party and adventure with us. In fact, when I needed that to happen, I had to make it really abundantly clear that NPC was going to travel with them. So that's a little... I would like to know more about this person's game and what they're hoping to accomplish.
So sidebar, check your motivations. Make sure that you're not putting something in this super cool paladin that really you just want to play. That's not your job as the DM. But I love what your characters have done in twisting your idea, and I think here's an easy, quick fix for you. Take this NPC's character sheet and put it on the table where your players can see. They know what spells the wizard has, and the players basically get to tell this NPC what to do. Bam, the problem of you not knowing how to play this wizard is solved. The players are like, cast a fireball for us, and the NPC does. Problem solved, easy peasy. Best of luck in your actual play. I mean, my normal advice is to leave this to people who are professional actors and improv people.
The other thing,
maybe you are.
The other thing that was a little bit weird about this is that it seems like the DM is especially concerned with the mechanics of a wizard, which are a little fiddly compared to a rogue or a paladin, I guess, but not especially. And also, this is a common misconception, but your job as the DM is not actually to know literally everything about the game. In fact, your job as the DM is first and foremost to run the game and make sure the story is continuing. You know, if you want, you do not have to adhere to the rules with, razor sharp precision. Just get a general idea of what the wizard is going to cast, 2 or 3 spells, and then cast them. I had a wizard in one of my games that only cast Fireball. That was his little thing. That was his tick. Is the only spell he had memorized was Fireball. It also made it very easy to run that wizard.
Right. NPC wizards aren't as good as normal wizards. They may only know 2 spells, right? They may know Fireball and the Light cantrip. Well, they spent 50 years learning those things, and they can cast them well.
Let me tell you a secret. If you put an NPC in, and it's a rogue or a wizard or a paladin, you didn't expect it to have to do something. You don't have to know everything about NPC. You don't even have to know what subclass it is. Just make sure that you know what that NPC's basic attacks or basic spells are, and wing it. If you get bogged down, letter writer, in all the needless minutia of things like this, you are going to have an awful lot of trouble making it through the campaign. So learn where to not put a whole lot of effort in.
Next letter. This is a short and a weird one. I found this one buried on a forum that no one had responded to. So
I'm excited.
So this person needs us, Rob.
This person needs our help. All right, I'm ready.
It's a long letter. Are you ready?
I'm ready. How old is it? Are we delving?
I have no idea. I got this like weeks ago.
Are we delving into the depths of time? Okay. All right, I'm listening. Let's go.
Is it a good idea to let the player be Medusa?
No. The answer to that question is no. It is not a good idea to let the player be Medusa. Not to be a Medusa, not to be the Medusa. It's not a good idea to let the player base their character on Medusa. Oh wait, hang on. Well, hold on. Let's roll this back, Matt, actually.
Yeah, so actually, I think this player is right. Be Medusa. Medusa, technically, in Greek mythology, is a person, not a group of monsters.
Right. Though, having somebody whose hair is snakes and turns people into stone in the party presents some logistical problems that I'm not sure are going to be very easy to overcome. But that makes me think, no, it's not a good idea to let your player be Medusa, but if you were a particularly ambitious or bold DM and you wanted to run a monster campaign in which every player is a monster, like an ogre or a Medusa or a gnoll or something else, then perhaps that would work. You would have to almost certainly create your world and your campaign from scratch, because Matt, maybe you can correct me on this, there's like absolutely no written modules where the players are monsters, unless you count something like the Goblin Adventure from Pathfinder.
I don't think there are. And so, yeah, you could do a huge rehaul of things, but the first piece of advice I would give is ask the player why they want to be a Medusa, right? And it might just be that they want to be a weird outsider. It might be that they want to turn people to stone all the time, and that's something you'll have to say no to. But here's an easy solution for that. Is you're like, well, you can't be a Medusa because you can't be around anyone without turning them all to stone. However, maybe you're the daughter of a Medusa, half Medusa, and then give them the Tiefling class and give them instead of, I think there's a variant out there that lets the Tiefling cast like a 1/3 level spell a day, and change that to flesh to stone. They get it at a higher level, and so they're half Medusa, and their powers are slowly developing. I would say the same thing if you wanted an all-monster party. A quick way to do that is like, oh, you want to be an ogre? Well, you're a half ogre. Here's the half orc.
Right.
Class.
Exactly. So, short answer, no. Long answer is depends on the player.
Ask them why.
Ask them why.
I've got 2 more letters.
Oh my goodness,
I think
we've
if
got
we
2 more
handle them
letters.
quickly,
all right, let's do 2 more letters.
We can
then.
do this great. All right.
I'm ready. Go ahead.
Question.
We got time.
What's the best way to scam my party? I run a game with 6 players in D&D 5th edition who are currently making a long haul traveling across country. The next session I have planned has them meeting a traveling salesman who's offering magical items that are either ridiculous or completely detrimental in hilarious ways. The one problem is one of my players has the identify spell. What's the best way for me to earn his trust so he doesn't bother with the spell, or perhaps convince him not to do so as the salesman? His version is ritual only, so I think having the party stand around for 10 minutes at a time waiting may help. But I worry he might check one item and the whole game will be up.
This is a great question, and it is one that comes up a lot, especially if you've got a player that likes to use Detect Evil or Identify or one of those spells that allows them to overcome, the very obvious traps. There's a lot of ways to go about this, and I think the DM has already identified some of them. It takes time. Maybe the salesman has an item that's particularly interesting or valuable, and the players aren't going to want to wait for it to be identified to put it on or use it or apply it, and you can get around it that way. You can also, there's nothing saying that you can't make these items difficult to identify or have some sort of non-standard spell placed on them that, if they don't sufficiently roll on their identify spell, gives them a false positive.
I would steer clear from saying that players who are trying to say, is this thing weird or cursed? And then you're like, no, it's not. And then it is. And then they're like, well, why couldn't I tell that, right? There needs to be a good reason why they couldn't tell
absolutely.
that. I would say,
I'm not saying if they ask, is this cursed? And they do their due diligence in checking that it's cursed.
Here's my advice is, one, ask your motivation for why you want to give your players a bunch of hilarious or cursed items. If you want to have a fun session where they have to deal with all that, I think that's a valid thing. Your way of giving them to them is pretty obvious in a traveling salesman. Plus, there's no actual reward for your players. One solution is have this salesman. Why does this salesman want to get rid of these items? Maybe you can only get rid of them if you sell them to someone else. This salesman, to get rid of them, also has one really great item that people in the party really want. He's only willing to sell them to all your players in bulk. There you go. A better way to plant cursed items is to actually have them as treasure in the dungeons. Players are much less suspicious than a traveling salesman.
That's true. That your players are going to be rightfully suspicious if somebody shows up with impressive or interesting magical items and offers to sell them at anything less than an exorbitant amount. So there may be a better way. Matt's correct, actually. Examine your motivations. If you want this to be a fun little interaction, maybe instead of a traveling salesman, you come across a caravan that's been raided or abandoned and there's some interesting things there, or you come across a corpse or something where it won't be quite so suspicious as some guy coming up and selling, weird trinkets. As narratively interesting as that is, your players are smart. They have also seen the same movies and read the same books, and so they're not going to take a salesman selling interesting or unusual things at face value.
All right, we've answered 2 silly questions. I have one final question. It's more serious, and we should end on it because I think this is a common thing that lots of DMs need help with. You ready for our last one?
I'm ready.
All right. I'm not sure how to help my players learn to play 5th edition. As a bit of background, I've been DMing for a lovely group of players for a few months now. I've only DM'd a few times before this, though I've played plenty of 5th edition as a player. None of my players has any real D&D experience with any edition before playing with us, so I've kind of held their hands through the process of playing. The problem is, I feel like I haven't really taught them to play well enough. I think I've held their hand too much, and I feel like they rely on me tailoring things to them. The issue is, this is putting more stress on me as the DM, and I can't really explore ideas like I want to or use adventures. I'm not sure what to do from here. I think they only have the barest knowledge about the game, and I don't know how to guide them. The kicker is that I'm far too broke to afford all the books, something the authors of this podcast can identify with, so I can't just throw books at them. I don't know how much that would help either. At this point, I'm considering looking into getting a copy of the player's handbook somehow, but I don't know how to split up one handbook. Right now, we're using online resources to play for the most part. I'd appreciate any help on this.
Well, one bit of practical advice is that there's a pretty robust open source book for 5th edition, which has all of the basic things. It doesn't have all of the classes, but it has all of the rules. So that by itself is something that you could print out and bind and give to your players, or
make one of your players who has a nice work printer print it out for you. Steal from your.
Though we are sympathetic to the challenges of not being able to afford all the books, and that is an obstacle. But in terms of having them know what their saves are and proficiencies and the nuts and bolts of their class, that's something that can easily be remedied. But let's get to the deeper question.
Yeah, and here's my strategy for teaching brand new players, holding their hands but so that they learn, right? Is remember, your job as the DM right, is just to ask them what they want to do in a situation and then interpret their actions in the world through the rules occasionally, right? When things are risky and you need to roll some dice, right? What you should do is continue playing with those players in that style. Ask them what they want to do, and then when a roll comes up, every once in a while you can tell them, oh, okay, you wanted to do this? Make an athletics check. You want to attack the goblin? You have to roll this and make an attack check. Pick and choose when you explain those things. And then take another approach where you have a goal for a session in like, oh, I want to accomplish this. I want this fight to happen. I want to move the campaign forward here, but also have a rules goal for the session. Start simply, right? The goal for today is that players are going to be pretty familiar with the basic concept of you roll a die and you add a number. Next time, we're going to introduce how hit points and resting works, right? So make sure, just piece it out one at a time and make sure that this one rule for today is the one I'm not going to hold their hands with, that I'm going to make them, I'm going to explain to them as they do it. The other ones we're just going to hand wave away. So piecemeal it out.
And the thing is, it depends, I suppose, a little bit on what your characters are playing, but you can set them, like Matt said, a rules goal, and a very simple rules goal. I have a new player who plays a rogue, and I have held her hand and I have been gentle with her because she's a good role player and she really enjoys the game. But recently I have said, I need you to know what your attack bonus is, and you need to know what you roll to do damage. And that was just those two things was a great rules goal to set for her. She now knows exactly like what to do to sneak attack and what happens, when she hits. And if you have a player who plays a wizard or a cleric or somebody who casts spells, to say, I need you to just make sure that you know one or two spells in case combat is going quickly and you need something to cast. So like Matt said, set reasonable goals, and maybe it'll be a few sessions before or a few months or even longer before a player has full grasp of everything that their character can do. But you should be able to get through the session with them having an idea of what they are capable of. They'll be able to approach the problems that come to them with, the confidence to solve them, or at least try to solve them with the tools that are available.
You can't expect too much, and if you just do it one step at a time, right? Go through the basic rules, and really there's only like 10 or so important rules to the game. And break those 10 out, and in 10 sessions, your players will know.
5th edition is very intuitive. It doesn't always seem so at first, but as make sure your players know their proficiency bonus, and then they'll realize that when they attack, when they roll a save, when they use a skill that they're proficient with, they'll say, "Oh, I'm using my proficiency bonus," and then things will start to click, and it will start to make sense, and hopefully that will help them, understand the system and their character a little bit better.
Best of luck, new DM. You'll get there eventually. And that does it for Unwanted
Advice. You're welcome.
If you have questions for us, send us an email at dmofnone@gmail.com, or you can message us at Twitter at dmofnone. Let us know what your problems are. We will solve them.